Whenever you're programming, you're bound to run into bugs. VS Code, an IDE made by Microsoft, offers a great way to solve your errors in a quick and concise way. Hello, my name is Ephraim Adunya, welcome back to my channel, and by the end of this video, you'll know how to debug in VS Code and have a better insight of your code. Debugging in computer software is the process of identifying and removing errors from your software or hardware. VS Code has a built-in debugger to make identifying the bug, finding its source, and correcting the problem very easy. The first thing that we'll do to begin debugging is install an extension in VS Code that'll let us debug the programming language that we want. The most popular extensions are the Python, C and C++, C#, and Chrome debuggers. In this video, we'll focus on debugging in Python, but you should be able to debug using the other extensions by following these instructions. I have a Python file open that accepts two values and prints the sum. Now if we run it and input two numbers, we get the sum. Now that we know the program works, we can get a better insight on it by debugging. First, we'll start off by installing the Python extension. You can do this by first clicking the extensions icon on the left side of your screen. Then, in the search box, you can just type Python and the first extension to show up should be the Python debugger. Just click the install button and make sure that the extension is enabled globally. Now, if you click the debug button, which is a play button with a spider on it, we can see a button that says Run and Debug, with text under it that says, to customize Run and Debug, create a launch.json file. If you click that text, you'll see a dialog box that asks us what debug configuration we want. Because we want to debug Python files, you have to click Python file. After that, you can see a file called launch.json is opened. If you check your files, you can see that a folder named .vscode has been created, and that is where the launch.json is. Inside of launch.json is where all of the configurations to debug are stored. Inside of curly braces is our Python configuration. We can see that the name is Python current file. We can also see that the type of configuration is Python and the request it sends is launch. This means that it will be running the Python file. Another kind of request would be attach. If the request were attach, then the debugger would attach itself to a Python file that we run ourselves. Next is the program that the debugger will run. We can see inside the brackets is the word file. This means that the debugger will run the currently open Python file. Next is the console type it will be using. Integrated terminal means that it will be using VS Code's terminal. If we wanted to add multiple different configurations, like launching and attaching our file, we could add those configurations separated by a comma in the launch.json. And then we could access those configurations by clicking the drop-down menu in the debug window on the left side of our screen. Now that we understand what's going to happen behind the scenes, we can get started actually debugging. So if we just open up the Python file that we want to use, we can just click the green play button in the debug window on the left side of our screen. However, other than just taking a longer time to load, we can see nothing different happen. This is because we didn't tell the debugger to stop anywhere. To stop the code at a certain point, we can use a breakpoint. A breakpoint is just a point in our program where we want to make it stop running so that we can inspect our code and then let it continue where it left off. To add a breakpoint, we just click next to the line number that we want to add a breakpoint. I'll add a breakpoint on the line that we add the two values on. If a red circle pops up, you've done it right. Now we can try launching the breakpoint from the debugger again. This time, after entering the values, instead of giving us an answer, now the line we added a breakpoint on is highlighted. Now, on top of the fact that we can pause our code, we can also view the values of each variable we created by just hovering over them. If we hover over the first number, we can see the value we assigned it. We can do the same thing with the second number. However, if we try to do this with the sum, nothing happens. This is because the breakpoint was hit right when the code moved on to the second line, so we haven't had a chance to get the sum yet. Luckily, we can solve this by just clicking the step over button. The step over button will go to the next line of your code and then break there. If we click it, it goes to the print statement and breaks the code there. Now if we hover over the sum, we can see the value printed. Next, if we want to just run our code normally, we can click the continue button. The next two buttons are better explained with some different code. First, we'll create a simple function that returns some text. Then we'll add a breakpoint on the line before it. Now we can run the code by debugging. First, we'll try to use the step over button. The code just jumps over the function to the next line to run. Now if we restart our code by using the restart button, we can try this again with the button next to the step over button. This button is called the step into button. If we press it, the code will step into the function and we can interact with it. This is where we can use the next debug button. The button next to the step into button is called the step out button. This button will let us step out of a function and into the line outside of it. Next, we can just run our code as usual. Thank you for watching. This has been Debugging in 5 minutes.